Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. My name's Henry Bingaman, and this is the series with Australia's best libertarian SaaS developer, Mr. Nick Watts. Nick, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot because I just want to be like Henry when I grow up. I'm now rocking the black t-shirt and I've got Henry's exact microphone just to try and improve the sound quality. So,
I have made some improvements on the typical Australian model, Nick, and we're upgrading him more and more towards the American style. So before you know it, that accent will be gone, and who knows what happens
yeah.
after that? The hair will probably fall out. Who knows?
I've tended to shave it pretty short my whole life, and it's a real problem, American accents on Australian children, because we have so much American TV, and Bluey is our attempt at revenge.
Oh, yes, I have heard many children um, running around saying words in funny accents because of that show. So we're having our comeuppance, I suppose.
It's
So
brilliant.
right now, we actually don't know if during this recording a nuclear war is going to happen because Tucker Carlson is at some point in the next hour releasing his interview with Vladimir Putin, which is, as everyone knows, the end of the world, and we are missing it because time zone overlaps make this very hard to find a good time to record for both of us. And it happens to be on my Thursday evening and your Friday morning.
I did not realize it was that soon, but that's all right. People can wait to hear Tucker until after we've finished.
Yes, you should wait till after this comes out Tuesday to listen to the Tucker interview that you'll
This is
have
no one's life.
listened to 5 days before. No, I'm fascinated by that. What is your take? Because Twitter is blowing up, the media is blowing up about Tucker talking to Vladimir Putin. That
Hmm.
it's just they already are 100% confident that this is a fluff piece, pure Russian propaganda. Tucker's not going to ask him any hard questions. And look, I could look like an idiot, and it could be the most obvious Vladimir Putin drool piece that you've ever seen. But I kind of feel like that's not what we're gonna see. I don't know. What's your take? Why do you think this is so controversial?
Well, the main thing I'm interested in hearing from that interview is I fully expect that there will be propaganda and lies coming from Vladimir Putin. He's a head of state politician. That's how did he get there? He's going to be a great propagandist. That's what we'll hear. But I am interested to hear what are the official lies being pushed on the other side of that Russia NATO divide. So we get obviously the NATO propaganda given to us through our news outlets, and some of that may be true, some of it I'm sure will not be true, and I'm sure there are some completely different things that are being told to the Russian people by Putin's administration that will be a mixture of truth and fiction. And so I'm really interested to hear what the official lies are from Putin, because there's real knowledge to be gained from knowing what they're pushing, even if you don't think it's actually true. It tells you something about their strategy, and I think that'll be fascinating. And I think at the very least Tucker will be able to pull the official lies out of him because that's what he wants to say. But I have some respect for Tucker Carlson. I think he's not terrible. I'm interested to see how far he'll try and push Putin or not push Putin. I'm sure there are people who would smack him around harder. Like, the Scott Horton interview with Vladimir Putin would be something to watch. And I don't think we're going to get that, but I also don't think it's going to be. I have more respect for Tucker Carlson than to think it's going to be entirely. I was going to say something uncouth, but you know, trying to completely stroke Putin's ego.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see because we know there's going to be misinformation for whatever that means. There's going to be Russian propaganda because, of course, it's just like we get nonstop American propaganda or NATO propaganda, as you pointed out. But what I'm really curious to see is what they have to label as malinformation. It's like the information that is true but inconvenient to the narrative that we've been fed. If you
Mm.
look at the history of propaganda, there's always something in there that is true. I mean, not every piece of propaganda is fully true, but there's usually a kernel of truth somewhere in the propaganda thing. And the most devastating, hard-hitting propaganda is the one that is like, yeah, this is our spin on it, but it's also true. And the fact that like NATO has been encroaching on Russia and just literally spitting in their eye for the last 40 years is, I mean, it's an inconvenient fact for the American narrative that we don't care. We have treated Russia like there's nothing you can do about it. And then they stood up and did something about it and we're shocked. I mean, obviously Vladimir Putin has murdered journalists. He's murdered political opponents. He's like not a friendly dude. I wouldn't want to turn my back on him in a room, but at the same time, like, look at George W. Bush and the American line of presidents all the way up through, Joe Biden. It's hard to grade on a curve with these people, but they're all lunatics who should be nowhere near the thrones of power.
Indeed. I saw a YouTube clip this morning. I just, woke up and looked at my phone. There was a notification out a Paul Joseph Watson clip about this Carlson interview. And one of the things that I think he does, I definitely don't agree with Paul Joseph Watson on everything, but one of the things he does really well now and then is just the internet never forgets, montages of here's what you said a year ago. And, he showed this montage of clips of these absolutely disgustingly fawning interviews with the American corporate media and Zelensky. And just kind of, do you really think that there were really hard hitting interviews given to Zelensky, that there's no agenda in these, interviews they've given him with really soft music? And just, do you find time to take a moment out and just be at peace and read a book or listen to music? How do you maintain your mental health? These super softball questions, as if Zelensky has done nothing even remotely untoward in the course of the conflict.
It's really amazing that man has
Yes.
been elevated to hero, and he's gonna get thrown under the bus so hard by the end of this thing. Like, I really
Mm.
think the media is gonna forget this honeymoon period they had with him. They're gonna pretend that he was always this monster and he was always anti-democracy, and all these, the draft was the fact that he's drafting 65-year-old men was always insane, and they never thought that was fine. Like, no, they're gonna do a 180 and like revise the history of this because Zelensky's such an obvious like I don't know. He's not quite Klaus Schwab level of cartoon villain, but I don't know. He's a clown. It's hard to take him seriously, and it's obvious what he's doing that somebody else is pulling his strings, or he's terrified. Like he's terrified of acting to end this conflict because the Azov battalion or whoever it is doesn't want him to. I mean, it's a tough situation, but I'm always anti-war, so I think this whole thing is stupid.
Yeah.
I like wish it had never happened, but I just have a hard time taking it seriously as a battle of good versus evil.
It's fascinating that you say that, because I've wondered to myself a bunch of times, what does the end game look like here for Zelensky? And you saying they're going to throw him under the bus, like I have no trouble believing that. I wonder what form that's going to take, what's going to trigger that, what are they going to spin about him exactly? Because it seems like there's no way out for him, right? Like, unless he actually straight up wins, decisively, physically wins the war, which I think seems unlikely.
Kind of,
Uh,
I see two outcomes for him. The first one is the people that are pulling his strings finally get sick of him and they cut the strings in I don't know how to say that politely so we don't get pulled off YouTube, but it doesn't end well for Zelensky. The other option is he runs away to a private island somewhere with the $1 billion that he's stashed away from American cash just flooding into his country. And people go, oh, yeah, he screwed him over and left. And that's why we had to make peace with Russia. So he gets to live a like villain lifestyle, but as a billionaire. I think that's kind of the deal that the U.S. state would like to make with him is that you have to run away. Uh, uh, you get to live like a billionaire, but we crucify you in the media, or snip
mm,
snip, and it's bad news for him. I don't know which. But those are the two likely outcomes I see if I put my tinfoil hat on.
yeah, I think the escape billionaire thing seems like that rings true, because there's a lot of people doing that right now, right? That's, uh, yeah, I think, best of my understanding, that's more or less what the Hamas leaders are doing.
Yeah, they're in
They
Qatar, right? They're
a lot of
living
a
in.
lot of aid that comes in winds up in their personal bank account and this kind of thing, and they're profiting from the conflict personally. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's not uncommon.
All right. Well, normally we open the show with business type questions. It was just, I don't know, the Tucker thing is so relevant that I thought I'd bring it up first. But we do have some business topics to talk about tonight. Uh, the first topic you brought up, well, do you want to introduce the concept?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that I've really been struggling with, because we're working on a product, but it doesn't have a name yet. I have this really generic name for all my files and things around it. But at some point, it's going to need kind of a branding name that we're going to try and sell it as. And I'm really struggling with what that might be. Like at some point, I've got to just buy a domain name to register in order to publish a SaaS product. What's that domain name going to be? So, what I was really curious to ask you, because you've done a lot more marketing than I have, is you want a brand that you want to sell. You want it to be okay, aspirational and speak to people's identity. How do you name something in order to try and get at those kind of aspects? Or even maybe you want to start by brainstorming, okay, I'm just going to force myself to come up with 100 names just as a starting point and then start whittling it down, something like that. But where do you even start for direction for naming it? Or do you just throw almost anything against the wall? Is it worth looking at random names? So I have a list somewhere on my computer I should pull up of domain names that I looked at. Just anytime I thought of something vaguely interesting sounding, I checked if it was available and kept a list of things that were available that had no relevance to anything. One of the fun ones that I really like, except that not that I have anything against Canada, but it sounds Canadian. And if I don't want to have explicitly Canadian branding, I don't want that. Maplebeast.com, I thought was a really cool one. If I was going to sell snowboards or something, that might be a great one to go with. But just, it has nothing to do with anything, but it just sounds fun. That's, how do you go about naming something? Have you ever had to name a product for a client?
Yeah, I mean, I've named a lot of different products for clients. So it really kind of depends, I think, on the type of product has a big influence on it. So like one of the big things I named was we had a division of Agora when I was working with them that was all about investing in cannabis, and so we had to come up with a name for that entire division. And Agora's divisions are like, there's Agora Financial, which is the main one. There's Legacy, there's Banyan Hill, there used to be Money Map Press. They have all these like random financial names, but we wanted something. Those are a little generic. Oxford Club. Oxford Club's kind of a cool name, right? It sounds fancy for investors. It's like, oh, you're in the club. But for this, we ended up naming it the National Institute for Cannabis Investors. So you're trying to get the impression with this that it's something big, something important. And when we had the names on board of like John Boehner and a bunch of politicians and celebrities. Joe Montana ended up doing it, so you could lend some weight to that. But that's like a prestige name when you're trying to get it in. With products, I have named a lot of different products, right? Like I have my Breaking Free course, and in product names like that, when especially course type things, you really want the benefit in the title as much as you can. Um,
Mm.
you can't always do it, but if it's something like Breaking Free for a freelancing course, it fit perfectly. You're breaking out of the machine of corporate work and going out on your own. With SaaS products, it's a little different because you're going for a much the SaaS we're doing. It's kind of a B2B, but also works as a B2C the way we're doing it because of the it's going after freelancers as our main target, which is it's like a B to small business, right? Um, so we need a lot of customers to make it work. So the more important thing I think for us is the domain name. So I actually really think it's like, look at Google or Zillow or any of those, like Uber. These companies, the name has nothing to do with what the company does. It doesn't make any sense, but it was a cool domain name that was easy to remember, and that's what made it take off. So the shorter, I like these shorter domain names. If we can get a .com, a lot of things are going with .app, and it doesn't matter, or .io. So we have some more options there. But honestly, I think
Yeah.
like I bought, I don't know, I have 100 and some domain names. We can look through mine, but none of them are going to be perfect for the exact SaaS software we're offering. So I really think we're going to end up with like I don't know, some shorter type domain name that we end up naming the company. I was talking about, we almost did a company with another friend of mine a few years ago. It was going to be a real estate thing, and we got the domain name Doors, DORZ.com. I still own that domain name. But like that was a cool name, I thought, for a real estate. It was somewhat related, a little misspelled, but it made sense for a real estate app that we were talking about. Now, there's a million reasons why that didn't get off the ground, just bad timing mostly. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I really think for us, our main thing is what's the coolest domain we can get, and then we'll build that brand out. Um, inside inside the actual app, the different things, like different parts of the product, might have cool beneficial names. Um, but yeah, for the main name, let's just go domain hunting.
Yeah, fair enough. I pulled up my list here, and I think I think at the time I was looking at doing something around the crypto space, and so I fully 8 out of 10 of them start with bit. It's like bit yonder, bit behemoth, bit scepter, all these kind of things. Bit vengeance.
Bit
I have
vengeance. Did you
some
buy?
like
Did you buy? I'd have bought those if I were you.
no. No, well, I mean, yeah, $20 a pop, it adds up pretty quick when I didn't really have something quite ready to do with it yet. And yeah, the other thing I'll say, pro tip for the audience, yes, a lot of people go with .io when they can't get the .com, or just because I wanted to do .io for something in the past because I just thought it was trendy, especially in the kind of tech space. And I found out along the line, you don't do that. First of all, .com's way more recognizable to the general public. Uh, it gives you better credibility. All the Fortune 500 companies eventually buy the .com of their company name. And also .io, it's not input output, which is what that kind of stands for in the tech world. I think it's Indian Ocean. It is actually like at the top level domain for a geographic area of the world. And so there is like government control from some other, I don't remember exactly what government controls the region or whatever, but if they decide they don't like the cut of your jib, or they screw something up technically, whatever little country it is, you can have real problems with an IO domain, and they're more expensive.
I did not know
So
that. That's good to know. There's a lot of there's a lot of SaaS stuff actually I use, or that some of my clients use. Like there's a video editing thing that's a .io that I have to log into
yeah,
every time we're editing video. And yeah, I didn't know that was controlled. That's interesting. That's good to know. Thanks,
it's
Nick. You're
it's
saving
trendy
us
in Silicon
headaches.
Valley, but yeah, I learned that from another developer. So that's good insider information.
Well, .com is
I
the
don't know.
gold standard.
Yeah.
I would always try to go for .com if you can get it. It's
Mm,
it's really getting hard to get anything under like 9 letters with a .com.
mm, yeah, that is a real thing. Or you're willing to pay for it. They're out there, but you're talking about thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's I know some people that have bought some big domain names, and I've had clients buy them before, going up to like $20,000. I know Tom Woods. He spent a lot of money to buy nationaldivorce.com. Um,
Mm,
I don't. I'm glad Tom Woods owns it though. I'm very happy for that domain to be
yeah.
in good hands. But yeah, it's hard to get good domain names at a .com. But man, are they good when you get them? The .com is the ultimate credibility in business. It's the original.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
There's
the other
a
thing. If I could go back in time, I would buy Bitcoin and more domain names. If I could go back to 2009 when I first started in business, I thought, oh,
yeah.
even in 2009, I thought all the good .coms were gone. Not even close.
So just to give the audience a reference point, recently before we started our SaaS, there was something pivoted to. I was looking at doing like a small email service provider type app, and I was trying to think of a name for that. And something that I really liked was Mail Tribe, and because that was really, I was taking Matt McWilliams' stuff about affiliate marketing and trying to gear some of my language around language he used, because I thought like that he has an audience and a lot of people know his kind of affiliate marketing stuff. I'm going to try and speak in language they're aware of, and he talked about building a tribe and this kind of thing. So Mail Tribe was the idea I had, and I found it was uh, available, but I think the person wanted, I forget how much it was. It was thousands of dollars. I think it was like $3,500 or something they wanted for that domain. And I just sort of thought, I'm going to keep seeing. I don't know if I can justify that when I'm just starting. I don't have any revenue yet. And I bought reachmytribe.com for, that was just untaken, $20, which I thought was actually not a bad name either.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Uh, I still have that. I have one day to renew it before it goes defunct because I'm not using it anymore.
Oh, renew it, or
Maybe I should renew it.
I'm gonna scoop it up for you.
Maybe I will
Um,
renew that.
I
So
wonder. Actually, there actually might be ways to use that for us. Like it's I don't know. We'll talk about that another time on our next actual working call.
yeah, they say you can see all the ideas that an entrepreneur had that they either never got around to pursuing, or started but got distracted from, if you just look at what's in their domain name list on
Yeah,
whatever domain name provider.
I have a couple. I have one that I paid $2,500 for, and I've done nothing with. But it's such a good domain. I'll tell you later what it is. I'll dig it up.
Okay, that's a secret.
Well, it's because it's still a good idea, but yeah, I don't know. Domains are tricky. Business names are tricky. But at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter, as long as it's not something that's too crazy or hyphenated or hard to get to. The easier it is to type in, the better.
Mm.
I don't know that it's you want something that's easy to remember. You want something that's easy to navigate. But at the end of the day, most people are clicking links to get to you anyway, not trying to type it in. We're not doing. I mean, we might do radio advertising at some point for it, but then you can get a shortcut URL. Like for my freelancing course,
Mm.
if you go to freeme123.com, it redirects you to the sales page for my freelancing course. I thought that was a cool little domain. It's easy to remember. That's like kind of one of those for podcast or advertising purposes, those little redirect domains you can use. So we'll get a lot of things like
Yeah.
those that'll redirect people if we start advertising. And then you can have whatever
And I think
domain
it's
works.
yeah. I think it's okay to use longer domains for those kind of shortcuts that you want to say on audio on a podcast. So this is like what Tom Woods does with his ebooks. Rather than say go to tomwoods.com/ebooks/whatever/this this book, just go to aociswrong.com. And it doesn't matter that that's kind of a lengthy domain. You wouldn't want to necessarily build a whole website around that domain, but it's easy to remember because it's really the number of words that's hard to remember, not the number of letters.
Yeah, I'm actually I want to talk to Tom. I see, so I'm hanging out with him. It'll be this week when this comes out. I'll be with Tom Woods, and he just released a new website for all his free books. It's tomsfreebooks.com. Tom, you're getting free advertising on the Practical Liberty podcast. Um,
I clicked on that this morning.
did you? It's interesting. But that's easy to remember. And now you can just send people to whenever he has a new ebook, you can just send people to tomsfreebooks.com, and they can
Hmm.
log in and get it. So I don't know. I like that strategy.
Indeed. I really like that he has supportinglisteners.com. He should, surely he should make that into like Patreon for podcasters. I don't know why that's not a thing.
I agree. Actually, that's a really good idea. I didn't realize. Yeah, I guess I did know he had that. I'd never thought of that though. That's a really good idea. He should. If he's built the software anyway, right? It's just a payment processor. So, Tom, what are you
Yeah,
doing,
no,
man? What are you doing with your
yeah,
life?
yeah. I think I became a supporting listener. It was years ago now. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly what the website looked like now. Yeah,
It's still functional.
yeah. Tom's not busy, right? He doesn't have that much going on. He should be launching this other business.
He's too busy planning his murder mystery dinners. All right, let's move on. The next thing you wanted to ask about was ecom. I know you're reading Chris
Mm,
Orzakowski's new book, The Moat. Man, I'm just promoting
yes,
all my friends' stuff today, but yeah. So great book, by the way. Go to the emailcopywriter.com is Chris's website. Another
that is
great
right.
stuff. Another great place to go. But yeah, what was your question about ecom?
So Aussie's book, The Moat, is it seems like it's mostly geared around ecom businesses. So you've got some product that you want to sell online. I think whatever it is could be, some clothing type thing, some kind of recurring food type thing. I'm selling coffee. I'm selling, uh, I don't know, paleo carnivore snacks, socks, whatever it is, something that you have a lot of and you want to sell to a lot of people. And the basic formula is do some paid ads on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and then also build up an email list and keep selling to those same people. Because look, if someone bought fancy coffee off you once, that coffee's going to run out and they'll probably want to buy more, and you can get repeat customers. And so far I'm only 20-30% of the way into the book. So far, what he means by the moat is this: a castle has a big ring of water around it. The moat, that's to make it hard to attack the castle because it's hard to cross over the water part with your army. If the drawbridge is up, it's hard to get at the castle. So the moat is what you have around your business to make it hard to compete with you, and to make sure your business tends to keep on trekking, customers keep coming back to you. And so that would include things like you want to have an email list, because that's really hard to shut down. As long as you have the list, if your email provider kicks you off, you can get another email provider and still contact everybody. Where if all your contacts are just on social media, if your social media account gets shut down, you're SOL. So that's part of a moat. And then another big aspect is you want to have branding that people really connect with, that makes them feel like, yeah, I want to be a part of the story of this brand. And so he points out some good examples of things like Harley Davidson. People don't just want to be motorbike riders; they want to be Harley riders. There's something in the brand there that they really connect with, and having that kind of branding is part of a moat around the business. And so that's all been really interesting for me. I'm really hoping, as I keep going through Aussie's book, he's going to tell me how to get that kind of really good branding, because I'm hoping that'll tell me how to name our product, just to tie all that back together. That's where I'm going with it. But it also got me thinking, given that this is practical liberty, I bet there's some people out there who are stuck in a 9 to 5 and would like to even just make a bit of extra side income or take their first steps in entrepreneurship at pretty low risk, don't have to quit their 9 to 5 yet. So, what do you think of having an ecom set up as like a first stab at doing entrepreneurship? So, just find a product, start a Shopify store, start learning the ropes of doing some, you know, social media ads, email marketing kind of stuff. What do you think of that as a starting point for the person who's just in their 9 to 5, grinding away, and wants to take a first step towards breaking out?
I think it's a terrible idea. So
Terrible
I
thing.
yeah, I have a couple of reasons. I know a family member of mine tried to go down this side income ecom route. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, you couldn't, if you were on anyone's email list, you were getting promoted this like start an Amazon store and make $1 million type product. And one of somebody I'm close to bought the thing, and I told them at the time it was like five
It
thousand
was Aussie.
dollars.
Just
Yeah, Chris Orsi. This is where he started getting scammed by an Amazon reseller type thing. No, I told the person like this is not a good product. You're not going to learn this. Refund the thing. They didn't. Went forward with it. Ended up investing a good amount of money, a lot of time researching, following the course outline, and eventually they released a product, had it made in China, shipped over here, and then there was a trademark infringement claim. Amazon confiscated it and destroyed their entire supply. Like it is not a good idea to start ecom without actually. The reason I promote freelancing as the first thing to do is because the essential element, whether it's a side hustle or any business, unless you're doing like a commodity type side hustle, like an Uber or something like delivery, something like that, that's anybody can do. That's a very low type paying side hustle. Every side hustle that you're going to want to do requires at least one skill that you really need to take time and develop. So that could be ad buying. Um, I would take time to really learn ad buying, and then you can do ecom because you have the skill to promote the product. But if you don't have the skill and you're trying to follow somebody else's blueprint, you're never going to work. So learn ad buying, learn media buying. I mean, copywriting, graphic design, even programming is a great one. Like anything that you can learn on somebody else's dime part time. This is why I love freelancing because you get paid to develop skills, be around other high skilled people. You can do it in the mornings or evenings or whenever you have time. And like you need somebody to show you the ropes. It's really impossible to take a course and learn a skill and start a successful business as a part-time thing. Like if you're determined that you love ecom and you're the best sock maker in the world and you do something, crazily unique with socks or know how to get them manufactured, um, go ahead. But it has to be your full-time passion and you have to have the money and be prepared to start that. Ecom is not something like drop shipping. There's people that do this stuff. There are some people that figure out like, okay, I can white label a supplement, drop ship it from here. But those people, they're really good at the copywriting or email marketing or whatever. So you have to develop the skill first. Like I would not start any business as a side hustle. Maybe a blog or something like a niche website that you can do. I know there's somebody that was at Tom Woods. I'm always bringing that man up, but they were at his school of life, I think, and he talked about him at some point, and they had started like a cooking website and got it up to this insane amount of revenue just from like
yeah.
ads and maybe selling ebook or cookbooks and stuff like that. But that starts slow and you spend a lot of time, and they were very good. Their skills were cooking and writing about it. And then they figured out some other hacks to, get attention. But start with the skills. Like start building an email list now. Don't expect to make money from this business right away, right? Don't expect to make money from a skill. It takes time to develop these things. But invest the time to develop the skill, and then you could start a side hustle. You could start a full business, whatever. You have a skill that actually makes you more valuable on the marketplace. So just jumping in and thinking it to me, that's like any other biz op type thing. It's not going to work unless you already are more talented than average, like more talented than just someone off the street at a particular part of the skill. Actually, at ecom, one of the skills that some people are really good at is supply chains. Like they actually have an intimate understanding of the supply chain from Mexico and China and India, and they know exactly how to get the best prices on things. That it Whatever you do, you need some unfair advantage in your skill set. So no, just jumping into ecom as a business and like Chris Orsi's great. Like the book, I'm sure is great, but it takes time to build a brand. It takes money to build an e-com store. So no, as a side hustle, I don't think it's a very good idea at all.
Yeah. For context, I think Ozzy's book is kind of being pitched at people who have a semi-successful ecom business already and just trying to, you know, amplify it,
Yeah, there's
give it a shot in the arm.
he's for people that are marketing e-com businesses. So like he has an agency that markets e-com businesses, and he has some membership sites and stuff, mastermind groups that do that. So yeah, he has
Mm,
reasons, like that book fits very well with the people that follow him and will become his customers. I
yeah.
again, I haven't read it. I know Chris is like, man, he's got a lot of good stuff out there. So I can probably recommend it already, not having read it, that it's going to be enlightening. But I still, I don't think even Chris would probably say, I don't know, maybe I'll ask him if he would recommend ecom as a side hustle. I just don't see it working that well. I really think the best thing to do is find a skill that other people value: copywriting, media buying, supply chains, programming, design. Engineering is something people don't think of, that there's freelance engineers. There's freelance everything, guys. Freelancing is the fastest growing category of work,
Mm,
but you have to develop a skill. You have to, like, this is why I talk about the skill stack in my course, because you're never going to be the best at one thing, but you can combine a number of different skills and be totally unique. But again, that combination makes you unique, and it makes you have to be better than other people. That's the only way to get paid more than other people, is to be better than them or provide more value.
yeah. Very subtle but important distinction there between being better and providing more value.
It's yeah, it it's funny. It's actually not that subtle, but there's some people that are way better writers than me, just these natural talents, and they can't get paid and they can't get clients because they don't have the skill to handle a client. They don't have the interpersonal skills to, or they're too artistic or arrogant or whatever it is to be able to like lower themselves to deal with commercial writing. But fantastic writers and broke because they can't provide
Mm,
that value. If you can't give it to a client, if you can't sell it, it doesn't provide any value.
yeah. I know a couple of people who I think are professional artists of one form or another. I think one's a painter, visual artist, and others a musician slash music producer, who ideologically they are overtly free market capitalist types, which is uncommon for professional artists. But the interesting thing is that I think they produce like really, really high quality art, and it's because their whole mental model is not "I'm so brilliant and the world needs to see my brilliance." It's how do I entertain the people who I'm trying to get to buy from me? What do they want to see? What would they really enjoy in my work? How do I serve them? And that kind of outward, customer, viewer, listener focus, I think actually ends with them producing something that people go, "Wow, that's great." Uh,
I'd rather
I don't know,
not be the
tangential.
artist. I don't want to be an artist that's appreciated like 20 years after my death. That would be horrible to me. You just struggle through that. Like I had this whole, I was going to write the great American novel. And at 21 years old, when I graduated college, I had this dream, and then I went broke, and I'm like, you know what? Money's really nice. And there's people willing to pay for an entirely different type of writing than this fiction stuff I'm doing. So now the great American novel is my retirement plan. Once I've got enough money stacked away, I've got all my programs running, the business can go on autopilot. Then I'll take 6 months off and write the great American novel, and maybe some
Yeah, that's true
Australians will
there.
even enjoy it.
Maybe you think of your favorite novelists and how many of them wrote their popular novels when they were in their 20s. Uh, Matthew Riley, I think, was that young, maybe. Who wrote all these? I don't know. Do you know Matthew Riley? Bunch of
No,
action novels, Scarecrow,
yes,
Ice Station.
yeah, sure. There's
Yeah.
the reason one of the reasons I thought I was going to do this is I had the exact same professor and went to the same college as Michael Chabon, who wrote Wonder Boys and what else did he write? Wonder Boys was the one that won the book award. Um, oh, the Yiddish Policeman Union. What else did he write? I've got a bunch of his books down here. Anyway, I literally I have some of his short stories because my professor gave them out when I was in his senior seminar writing class. And Michael Chabon graduated. He went to an MFA right out of the fiction writing program at University of Pittsburgh. He went to an MFA immediately after that. It was actually unusual for writers. Usually, you go get some real world experience. You have to be really, really talented to get right into an MFA. And then he came out with Wonder Boys, I think, right after that, and it was just a hit. Like it was he exploded onto the scene, and he did his best work in his 20s, and now he's in his like 40s, and I don't even like his books as much anymore. His new stuff, it just doesn't have the same, I don't know, it doesn't have the same playfulness and funness that he used to have. I think he takes himself way more seriously now than he used to. So whatever. But I thought I could be the next Michael Chabon. I had, Chuck Kinder, the same professor, and didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I think of like famous authors, or I think of like Tolkien and Lewis and Roald Dahl and even like a J.K. Rowling. Like they're not that young when they finally do these great novels that everyone remembers forever.
Yeah, Rowling was in her 30s, I think, right? Later 30s. No, she was
Yeah, I
writing.
suppose like yeah,
I don't.
I
When
don't
she
know
had a real
exactly.
financial success, it was later. But her writing, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. She's an amazing writer too. It's funny. I just talked about her in my. I did a solo podcast that's coming out the Friday before this episode will come out, and I mentioned Rowling just as an example of a amazing writer. Um, she's I don't know. I'm a Harry Potter dork. What do you want?
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
those stories growing up.
Okay, I just I read them before they were movies. I'm that old, and yeah, I remember thinking at the time, like, this is fantastic writing. Even me, whatever I was, a teenager or whatever, going, this is there's you can just tell. You don't need to know an awful lot about the art of writing to know this is excellent writing.
Oh yeah, her character development and her just the way she can paint a scene is phenomenal. With such economy of words, she can get so much information out
Mm.
there. Yeah, I remember I was reading her books all through high school. I remember reading the fourth book on a plane to Germany, which was 10th grade, I think, and it had just come out. And then I went. This is how dorky I am. It was my junior or senior year of college, I think. I went and waited in line at midnight to get the last book as it came out. So I'm like, and I read it before morning. Like I stayed up all night finishing that book. So that's how dorky I am, everyone. So you know who you're dealing with here.
I think I remember going to college with people who were just laughing their heads off at the Harry Potter spoilers thing, where someone got hold of, I think it was book 6. And can we have a spoiler on this podcast? Is that gonna do you need to spoiler alert? Skip the next 2 minutes. Yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but if you don't want to hear the spoiler, just skip the next couple of minutes. So of course, at the end of book 6, there's this whole thing where Snape kills Dumbledore, right? And it's this giant, like, I can't believe that happened. Wow, kind of moment in the story. And so, of course, when the 6th book came out, someone got hold of it real early, flipped to the back and looked for something. Went, wow, I looked for something to spoil. Went, damn, this is the jackpot. And then went driving around past the lines of people out the stores, leaning out the window of the car, going, Snape kills Dumbledore.
That's so mean.
It's super mean, but yeah, it tells you the kind of people I hung out with in college that all thought that was hilarious.
Oh my. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, all
We
right.
got really sidetracked off whatever we were talking about.
And this is anyway, so that's a wrap up
Ecom,
to the ecom.
maybe not the best idea.
Yeah, I don't think so. But what else? We had. This was a great idea you had to talk about some of the areas where. So we know that the government infringes. We're going to get a little more into cultural things now. So the government is definitely the largest, I would guess, threat to liberty. But from a practical sense, this is practical liberty. In your day to day life, there's a lot more areas that you lose freedom. You give up liberty in some ways too.
Uh, so what I've been trying to come up with is some kind of framework for thinking it through that would you know, give people a system for how do I actually step through my life and see where the points are in my life where, oh, okay, I would actually do something differently there if not for this person or this organization preventing me. That's, if I had total freedom, here's how I would live, and just realizing, okay, that's a point there, there's another point there where I'm having to deviate from what I'd ideally like to do because someone else has this power or leverage over me. So I don't really have a systematic way to do that, but it's just something I've been trying to think through. And yeah.
That's literally what I tried to do with my levels of liberty. So I had the cornerstones of liberty, right? But then there's the levels of liberty. So where are you, like in a practical sense, where are you actually held back? This is why I like freelancing, because it's one of those things. Your work is, for most people, it's the most oppressive place they ever go, at school and work, right? And school, the only reason we
Yeah.
accept it, I think, the oppressive work environment is because we grow up in these prison industrial schools that prepare us for it. It's so unnatural the way most people work in cubicles, and like it. I just, it's horrifying to me. I had to do one summer. I did data entry for my dad, at his at the planing mill. And like it was the most miserable thing. I understand the need for it, but like it was the most miserable thing I could ever do. I would much rather like I've worked some construction when I was young too, like some outside jobs. I was a mailman for a summer. Those jobs actually feel way less oppressive to me because you're outside and moving. There's something about physical labor that is natural, I guess, in some way. Like it feels right to be doing something with your body. But this sitting in like a factory setting or a a cubicle, it's just so unnatural. And like if I don't know, I don't think anybody can like it. Like I understand the need for some of those jobs, and some people it's the best option they have, and that like yeah, like maybe that is the best. It's better than starving to death, right? It's better than being poor.
Mm.
But if you have options, if you have any talent at all, like that's the work is the number one place that you're volunteering for the oppression.
Yeah. So I think programmers call it working in a code farm. That's kind of the horrifying thing where there are jobs you could take where maybe it's very physical, but your mind is free. It doesn't take a whole lot of mental engagement to do the job. So like you could be listening to a podcast or something while you, I don't know, lay bricks or mow lawns, or like you could do that, and there'd be your mind is free to wander, and that's kind of nice. But then there are other jobs where you physically have to be typing with your hands or whatever, but it also takes some mental engagement, but it takes no creativity. So data entry, I think, is probably one of the big ones there, or like just maybe transcribing audio or something like that. Like you've got to be both physically and mentally present there, and both your mind and body are engaged in the task and can't wander. That's but it requires no creativity, so you're not exercising. There's no satisfaction from having done something creative, which I think is that's kind of the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, that's pretty
Uh,
brutal. I don't know. It's it does seem the data entry job was the worst thing I did. I've had a couple jobs I didn't really like. The mailman thing was interesting because when you have the same route, it almost feels like you're pushing the boulder up the hill because every day you come back and there's more mail to deliver to the same houses. But the physical movement and it does not require any brain power. I had headphones on. I wasn't listening to this was before podcasts, unfortunately. But I could listen to
mm,
music on my little MP3 player. So um, yeah, that was a decent. Plus, it was I got in good shape that summer, just walking 15 miles a day. Um, yeah, I don't know. Another area that you kind of mentioned was banking. So the financial system,
mm,
um, it's I don't think people like realized how oppressive the financial system was until they saw there were alternatives. And the financial systems, the way it's laid out, is new, right? People used to transact in gold and cash. They like there were no giant financial institutions. People didn't own homes, like have mortgages on homes. That's a relatively new invention, but it seems so escapable now. This is why I'm such a big proponent of Bitcoin. And I know you're looking behind you, you might like Monero. I know like there's a lot of people like so there's Bitcoiners that make fun of Monero, but it's the only one that everybody says might not be a shitcoin. It's the only one that people go, yeah, I understand the utility there. John Bush is huge on it. I know he's teaching a whole class on it pretty soon.
mm.
But it's an alternative to the financial system, and it's I don't think you realize how much control the banks have over your life until something goes wrong at your bank, uh, right? Like they freeze it. I was reading up on the Mercola case recently, where I think it was Chase Bank. Uh, I forget. I don't want to get that wrong, but some giant bank just froze him out, and the pressure came politically from like government officials that this is the collusion at the top of these institutions is horrifying. It's not, it's won't somebody rid me of this priest, right? It's not. They don't direct it exactly, but it's pretty gross how they work with each other, and it's straight political censorship. It's you will be punished, and we're going to make an example of people. So, yes, the banking system. This is why, in the course I've done with Tane Nix, one of the first things we talk about is getting an overseas bank in a
Mm.
country that actually respects privacy. The bank that Tane hooked me up with is it's in a Latin American country that respects privacy, and actually the bank has 30% reserves. Right, U.S. banks do not have cash reserves. At one point they had 10%. Now it's like less than 1% for most banks. They don't keep cash reserves.
Yeah.
So just the fact that this bank is solvent is
Mm.
fascinating to me. So yeah, and then you have an exit valve. The U.S. government will know it's there, right? I still have to declare it to the government. Well, actually, you only have to declare it if you have over $10,000 in it. But if I fully fund this account, I'll have to declare it to the government. But they can't touch it. They can't come after it. And the country that it's in
Mm.
is not going to respect, their request to freeze it. They just will not cooperate like that. So yeah, getting out of these things. This is why I have the levels of liberty. You move up them. The less control people have over you, the more you make an effort to get out of these systems when you find them. And it's hard to identify them because it feels like it's the world we're born into is literally controlling so much of our action that we don't notice it. But as you start noticing it and taking steps, it's liberating to get out of some of these situations that you find yourself in. When you realize there's a leverage point, try to escape it.
Yeah. So I think one of my big goals, it's just a dirt simple one, is just that we have a mortgage, and I think that's one of the big tie downs for us for certain things that we'd like to do. And so the way out of that is obvious: pay off the mortgage. Uh, but for me, that involves find ways to make a bunch more income and pay the mortgage off quickly. It's it's simple, but it's not easy. Uh, but that's one of the things. Like, I look at my life and go, actually, my bank has this big hold over me because we have a mortgage there. I'd like to have no mortgage. Uh, that'd be one less reason I have to interact with a bank at all. Uh, it'd be much easier to be on like a Bitcoin standard, the crypto standard, and do a lot more transacting in crypto if I didn't have to have a relationship with a bank to have a mortgage. Um,
Yeah, but it's actually, I guess Monero. This is a video. I do want to make this video of how to like kind of buy and operate with Monero because I don't. I still. I've looked into it a little bit. I have not figured out exactly how to buy Monero. I still haven't. I haven't done all that much research. I spent a couple hours looking at it, but I don't know how to get Monero. I don't know how to hold Monero. I don't know how to use it. Um, I've looked into some of. I don't know,
I think in the US you can just buy it on Kraken.
but am I going through exchanges? Like that's the best. Is that? I just feel you're losing privacy with
Oh,
all
like
these
that's
things.
oh sure, that's the easy way. You can get it on exchange like any other coin in the US. It's delisted in some other, like in Australia, it's delisted off the major exchanges. But in the US, you can just go on Kraken, it's a major exchange, and buy it. That's the very easy way. If you want to be really, really under the cover of darkness about it, then there's other steps. But the thing is, once you buy it and take it off the exchange, that's where the trail ends. So it's really not a big deal to buy it on exchange compared to other things, because once you take it off, there's no following you.
Yeah, that
It's,
is the advantage. I like the privacy aspect of it. It's the I don't know. I can't wait for you to actually have that debate with our friend Jethro. He's
yeah, I'm looking
there's
forward
that.
to it. I plugged it to a guy last night who's the only libertarian I know and legitimately respect who's an MMT guy. To me, that's a really strange combination. And he just kind of looked at me strange, like, why would you want to fix supply?
How are you a libertarian and a fan of modern monetary theory? That doesn't.
I
It, it-
I don't know. It makes no sense to me either. But just he's a forex trader, among other things, and I think he just sees the world through a different lens than I do. And
it's one of
yeah,
those instances of it. It's very hard to make a man see the truth when his livelihood depends on not recognizing it.
he was honestly the first guy that told me to actually go look up Fee and Mises and try reading Bastiat and this kind of thing. So I blame him at one level. He told me to listen to Tom Woods, also just great and terrible advice. It'll change your life.
There's nothing terrible about Tom Woods. Um,
If you love your life exactly the way it is and don't want anything to change, maybe don't go down that rabbit hole, Tom Woods. But if you want everything to get better, that's,
if you love your life exactly the way it is, why are you listening to any podcasts? Like you should just
that's
be
true.
skipping through
That is very
fields and
strange.
enjoying yourself. Nobody loves their life exactly the way it is. The human condition is to want improvement, no matter where you are. So, uh,
Mm,
striving. It's
yeah.
like what's the motivation if you've achieved everything? Like what would be the motivation in life if you have everything you ever could dream of having? I I wouldn't even want to get to
Obviously,
that
we're big
state.
Tom Woods fans. One that's sticking out to me that I look at and go, these people have leverage over me is my internet service provider. This is something I haven't fully explored, but I want to go further down the rabbit hole because I think if I did something that that the government didn't like, they could probably put pressure on my ISP. That would be their leverage point, or just if my ISP didn't like it. But the ISP I have, I think, is pretty good. their policies are pretty open and loose, and they're not too worried about what I do with my internet connection, it would be that I tick off a government, they put pressure on my ISP to cut off my service. And so I'm sort of thinking, well, what could I put in place in my life so that I'm much less worried about someone cutting off my internet access? That I have backup ways to be online. Maybe Starlink is one of those things. I want to know more about Starlink. I want to know how much you're locked into Starlink and how much censorship is on the Starlink network. It's not something I've looked into deeply enough to make any recommendations on, but this is something I'd actively like to know more about.
It really does seem fairly critical for the world that's being built right now. Is there's parallel universes, right? There's the physical world that's been here since the beginning of time, and there's this whole new digital space that is becoming equally important, or if not more important, to a lot of economic activity. And the digital world relies on the internet. So it seems crazy that we're building a world that could be taken offline by one EMP in the right place. I know there's the
Mm,
underwater cables that connect the United States and Europe, the United States and China. They come into like three places in the United States. Like there's a giant hub in San Francisco that if you cut the wires there, the U.S. and China will be completely disconnected. It's madness. Like half the internet would go down. It like we really don't have stable internet structure. Starlink is the first big innovation in internet infrastructure that we've had since the development of fiber optics, I guess.
mm.
It's and fiber optics that's been the problem with fiber optics has been the last mile problem, right? They can get the main hubs to places, but they can't get that last mile to actual people's houses. And like there's still entire counties in West Virginia that don't have high speed internet because there's no there's no way to get it to the houses unless they have satellite. So yeah, what do we do
Yeah.
if the internet goes out? How do we use like a crypto world doesn't work, right? The
Mm.
Bitcoin is the first money that's native to the internet, right? That's the big selling point on it. So what do you do if there's no internet? How do you ensure that? Like that is a strange, scary leverage point that it.
It is a really difficult problem. There is this interesting feature with Bitcoin and just with blockchain cryptocurrencies. So not every cryptocurrency has a chain the way Bitcoin has a chain. Most do, but not all. But ones that have a chain like that, they have this interesting property that's called eventual consistency. So you could be knocked off the network for quite a lengthy period of time, and if you eventually get full access to the network again, all the data will come in. People will have been mining blocks around the world in different places, and you'll get all that information. And suddenly, and the Bitcoin software will reconcile that into one coherent, internally consistent set of these are the transactions that happened. Maybe there were two that conflicted, and this is the one that is correct, and reject that one, accept this one. It will make the data consistent. It has eventual consistency. But with payments, you sort of want to know right then and there before you hand over the goods, is this payment going to be the accepted one? If we're cut off from half the world, like how do I know that someone doesn't have your private keys and they're spending this same money with a merchant in China while you're spending it with a merchant in the US at a time when the US and China are on separate networks? When that becomes consistent, eventually, when they're reconnected, one of those payments will be accepted and one will be rejected. And how do I know? So it's sort of, I think it's better to have eventual consistency than not have it in a scenario where just your little store is cut off from the network for an hour. It's great. It's a great feature that just once you reconnect, everything gets synced up and you're all good. There's no inconsistency problem. That's great. But if you're going to spend a month cut off from a large portion of the world, it's a problem. How do you reconnect it back up? Probably what would happen in that scenario, I think, is that you would end up with a hard fork. You would end up with two separate cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin US and Bitcoin China. And they would just stay separate and there'd be an exchange rate between them. And I think that's all we probably could do.
There would still be duplications in there. Like it would be that would not be a clean fork necessarily because people would have spent the same Bitcoin
No.
twice.
Yeah. And worse, if, uh, if you spend it in only one of the jurisdictions, but someone sees that transaction, you've signed that transaction. So if you haven't spent those coins at all in the other network, someone can take that transaction and kind of port it over and make it happen in the other one. It's sort of, I'm trying to think how to explain that without technical language in simpler terms. It's like a transaction replay attack.
without getting into the technical details, if the Bitcoin, if the world internet is divided and disconnected for any multi-day period, there's going to be some real problems that arise
Mm,
from that with basically every single cryptocurrency, for lack of a better term.
yeah.
Well, there's going to be a whole lot of like banking issues. There's everything's going to be. So I'm curious if I don't have the technical know-how to really even address this, but if you were going to, from first principles, build an internet that was safe and stable and had redundancy and backups, like what would it even look like in a world where like if the entire world economy would crash from being disconnected for a day, how would you build it so that it couldn't happen? Is it possible? Like, is this
Uh, Number one thing, I think the world. I mean, when you say world economy, I mean you really it's the crossing the sea thing that's the really difficult part because this is not something I know a lot about, but I suspect it's very very difficult to do that wirelessly. I expected, especially with a lot of bandwidth, you probably need just have a lot of cable. But just locally, at a with more ground infrastructure, I think one of the big pieces of the puzzle, at least, would be mesh networks. So rather than all the houses on my street are connected to an ISP, and there's this sort of hub and spoke model where there's a central point and everyone's got a connection to that, and they go to each other by first going to the hub and then back to their neighbor. Rather than that, have all the neighbors connected to each other directly, and data just passes from my house to my neighbor's house to their neighbor's house through a bunch of hops and eventually gets where it's going. So I worked on something like this back in the day. I worked at a company that made software for running on a tablet computer in a mining truck. And so in a coal mine or a gold mine, there's not a lot of network access. There's not phone reception. So the truck's driving around, there's no cables connected to it. How do you get data to and from the truck? Because you can't take it out of circulation. Like every load it's taking is thousands of dollars of ore. You want the trucks running continuously. People drive them 24/7. So you don't want to go and plug it in somewhere, do a big data download, and then go back to running loads. You want it to be wireless somehow. So what got implemented was mesh network. So every time two trucks pass, in the time it takes for them to pass each other, they form a wireless link, swap all the data that they each have, and there's again this kind of eventual consistency algorithm that takes the data that that other truck has that it got from some other trucks, and so they're all passing each other through the day, swapping data back and forth, and the algorithm kind of puts all that data together in a coherent way. Eventually, one of the trucks goes back and passes by the base, dumps all of that back at base, and it shows up on someone's terminal so they can see all the stats. There's been this many trips, there was this weight of ore taken, we got this much final product out of that load of ore, and tracking all the stats.
I imagine since there's multiple passes of multiple trucks, so there's redundancy built in. If one link doesn't form, you just hit the next truck, and yeah, it would.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
It's
decentralization is
very
an
resilient.
amazing thing. Like it's when
Mm,
the less centralized you get any network or any system, essentially, the more resilient it is. But it comes with some other problems. But I don't
yeah.
know.
So you get
It
more
seems
resiliency but less efficiency.
yes. Um, but I sometimes you have to trade efficiency for resiliency. Like it's one of those, what was it? Thomas Sowell. There's no benefits, just trade offs. Right? There's nothing good or
Mm.
bad. It's just everything's a trade off. And if you realize the downside of not having a resilient internet when everybody depends on it, like if the internet just went down and reset, like if there was that giant EMP over New York City, trillions of dollars would be unaccounted for all of a sudden. Like the banking systems would like it's really devastating what could happen, and we're just not prepared for it.
I've got to assume they're like some of the most critical components around Wall Street and whatever. I have to assume some of them are in serious Faraday cages where they're actually EMP immune.
You would hope so, but I don't trust these people's competency. Like it's they seem so reckless on everything, on so many things they do.
Mm.
Like the 2008 is a perfect example. I mean, 2008 was the culmination of a bunch of really, really reckless behavior based entirely on greed and short sightedness. They do not
Yes,
think
that
long
is fair.
term. They really think like what's going to get me paid, what's going to get my Hamptons mansion, and then let the world burn. It's funny. I was listening to the Chris Martenson went on Liberty Lockdown a couple days ago, and it was a fascinating interview. I worked with Chris like a decade ago. he's been on this like his website is Peak Prosperity. He's been peak everything since as long as I can remember. I think I worked with him in 2012. And but anyway, he was talking about like the lab stuff that we're probably going to get banned from YouTube for saying. But his point was like what they did, the hubris of the scientists, they had no idea what they were creating and unleashing onto the world. They knew they were creating something and they thought, "Oh, we'll just see." It's like the arrogance and the hubris it takes to do that and unleash it on the world, even though you know it's accidentally, probably accidentally, might be a bioweapon, who knows. But just the hubris to create it in the first place and think you can play God like that, there's no safety. You could literally wipe out the world with the arrogance that these people have. So that's why I don't know that everything is backed up and redundant as much as we want to think. It seems like the world is so suicidal right now. These institutions, they don't care.
So the thing that comforts me the most, the thing that enables me to sleep at night in the midst of these thoughts, is to realize that cutting off the internet connection between, say, the US and China, I don't think there's anyone who thinks that's really strongly in my interest. No one with any significant amount of power, no politicians, no business people. I I don't think, you know, Xi Jinping, whatever, thinks that that would be in his interest. I don't think the Biden administration, whoever pulls Biden strings, thinks that's in their interest. It's in everyone's interest, you know, good and evil, that it stays connected. That's
Yes, that you're right. There is no real incentive right now to pull the plug on the world economy. Um, for
Having
now.
said that, I once heard this really interesting tech talk with a woman whose name I forget, who was part of building, like substantially rolling out internet infrastructure across the continent of Africa, and so rolling out, you know, big fiber optic cables and things, trying to get Africa much more internet connected. Which, you know, great thing, unlock heaps of human capital, all for that. But she said one of the overhead costs that they had was having to send people in, you know, jeeps with guns, security, just constantly driving back and forth along the cable because people kept cutting it. And I think, like, why? Who? And what possible motivation could they have?
It's
It's
it's something that Jordan Peterson said, and I don't often quote Jordan Peterson, but that there are some people that are living in hell and just want to create that reality for everyone else. And I'm like, it's scary. There's some people that want destruction for destruction's sake. It really is. I mean, if you look at it on a spiritual level, like the enemy of humanity is just destruction. It is chaos and destruction and anti-order, and like, so if there's demon spirits out there, like if you look at in biblical times, there was these periods of destruction that were all.
yeah,
I mean, it's a spiritual warfare. Like it takes over people, and it happens. If you, I don't know, I don't know how
yeah.
else to explain some of the
I
things
do
going
believe in all
on.
that. I don't. Yeah, yeah. I struggle with exactly where I think it's actually happening. In principle, I believe all that is there, but I always struggle to put my finger on it.
I look at the level of evil, and like it's there's things being done that are destructive that no one profits from, and I go, where else is that coming from? Like it's just somebody that hates the world or it's the anti-humanity strain in the world is right now it's too high. And it's terrifying in some ways.
Yeah, I think one of the really an epiphany I had once that it came from this book. It was the book was called The Purity Principle. I heard it ages ago, and the guy's simple line was, "Purity is always smart, and impurity is always dumb, always." And so it was in the context of things like, you know, you're gonna have a pornography habit or something. Aside from whatever moral considerations you might have about it, it's just not good for you. It's unproductive. It's not wise. And so his thing was just anything like that. Impurity is dumb and purity is smart. It just is. And I thought that through. As I extrapolate that out over time, I kind of realize every evil thing, every wicked thing that people do is inefficient. It would be a smarter, more effective way to make more people more happy more of the time to not steal, to not kill, to not cheat. And so the fact that it is a world full of people doing wicked things, just assume, therefore, that lots of people must continuously be doing things that are unwise and inefficient and not rational.
That is the human condition, right? It's like,
It's if everybody was fully rational all the time, nobody would ever hurt each other because that's not productive. Cooperation is productive.
but just think of what that means for the potential of humanity. That we're this bad uh, already, and society is flourishing to the level it has, and we have the wealth and comfort that we do. How much better could it get if we all just like acted a little better, like a little more
It's
purely and a little more, rationally? Um, yeah, we got a lot of ways, a lot of room for improvement.
it's true. It's a cool thought, and I would love to see massive, massive internet rollout on the continent of Africa and just see all that human potential unlocked because I realize just how baffling that could be for the future of the world.
Through Latin America, South America, Africa, India, some of the Southeast, like there's so much human potential that is waiting to be tapped into. That extraordinary times. It's the best of times and the worst of times. Mr. Watts, we have been going now for over an hour. I think we gotta wrap up here. Any closing thought?
I think
Actually,
so.
that's a pretty good closing thought. That look, the
I
world is
think it
full of
is.
human
It's very
potential.
hopeful.
Yes, being waiting to be tapped into, and you can be next.
Let's tap yours.
All right. On that note, everybody, stay free.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much for watching that. If you enjoyed that video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. And if you know anybody that would find this beneficial, that would find this enlightening, or just wants to become more free in their life, share this channel with them, share this video with them. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.